Hey everyone, and welcome to the Pisgah Podcast.
We are your hosts, Drew and Mangler, and we're coming to you live, sitting on the U-shaped branch on the climbing trail at Kanuga.
Ooh, I love this branch. This is a great spot. We've got a great episode in store for you guys. Cranksgiving went down this past week. How leafy is too leafy? And we caught up with one of the masterminds behind Kanuga Bike Park. So let's get rolling. So Drew, how was your holiday weekend? Did you get much riding in?
It was okay. We laid low for the most part. Didn't do a whole lot of family Thanksgiving, but me and a pal went and did an out and back out at Weed Patch out near Lake Lure.
Ooh.
And did a big Ivy ride yesterday, so closed the weekend out in style.
Man, out and back on Weed Patch is a legit ride.
Yeah, it was a lot more than I'd bargained for, but it's a good day for it.
Yeah, I mean, we had great weather over the weekend, and so get it in while you can.
For sure. How about you?
So my van had to be left in Virginia a couple of weeks ago, and I needed to go pick it up, and it just so happened that this week timing lined up right to do that. So did a little road trip up to Virginia, rode some Carvin's Cove, some Douthat State Park, and some Iron Mountain Trail in Damascus, Virginia.
What was the leaf level like up there?
I'm guessing the leaves probably fell a little sooner up there than they did down here. So most of the stuff that we rode was pretty beaten in. I mean, there were still some zones that had some fluff to them. But for the most part, you could tell what the trail surface was like. What about yours? What were your trail conditions like on Weed Patch and stuff?
Pretty dry, so the leaves are fluffy in places, and I think that a little bit of moisture could kind of help break the leaves down a little bit, but most of the turns where people skid through them, things like that, they're starting to get scattered and starting to kind of clean out. But Big Ivy's just not getting very much traffic out there. It was pretty deep still in some spots.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I went and got in a Kanuga lap this weekend, and that stuff was running really good. I was kind of interested to see how the trails held up after the race.
Yeah, I think a lot of the trails that they have there get cut in pretty fast. Watching some of the stuff that they'd built and some of the turns that they taped off for the race in the week leading up to it, you would think they were insane the way that they had some of them routed and some of the new turns that they'd put in beforehand. Come race weekend, it was pretty well groomed and packed in.
Yeah, that's what I'd heard.
Yeah, well, speaking of Kanuga, last weekend was the Cranksgiving event, which is an event that's typically held in the Greenville, South Carolina area, Harris Mountain State Park, and various other surrounding parks, but due to some COVID restrictions and shutdowns, having a central venue like Kanuga became important to them and a good partnership, so they were able to host that race there.
You raced, right?
I went, did the Super D race, but I had no business being out there in the condition I'm currently in.
Well, I stopped by late Saturday afternoon as the cross-country race was going on just before sun went down. Just kind of check things out and get a couple of upper mountain laps in. I was up at the top and overheard some riders talking about how surprised they were at some of the good COVID precautions that were being implemented at the pavilion. What did you notice as a, quote, participant?
Yeah, they did a great job at registration. They took your temperature. They only let a few people in the pavilion at a time. That way they could keep proper social distancing protocols. The start to all of the enduro stages, they allowed racers to race every stage in whatever order that they wanted to. That way there was never a line, kept people from having to line up and congregate unnecessarily.
Yeah, I chatted with Nico for a few minutes, and he was telling me about how it was kind of rider's choice on which stage they wanted to do first. And that's always been kind of a holdup on a lot of enduro races, is the stage starts get all congested with riders waiting in line. But with it being open to do whichever stage you wanted, I can see how that kept things moving a lot better and keeping crowds from forming too much.
Yeah, it was a really good format, and maybe promoters will take note from that and put a pin in their hat for that one for future events. But yeah, I spoke with the first place finisher from the Enduro to get a race recap.
Oh, nice. You got Nico on the mic.
Well, I had a conversation with the first place that works a day job, Gus Michaels. He got 5th place on the day.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Gus was going up against quite a few World Cup heavy hitters on the riders list.
Yeah, let's hear the interview. This past weekend was the Cranksgiving Enduro and race weekend. There's other races involved, like a Super D and a short track race, but we'll focus on the enduro part of this to get some comments. This race happens pretty much every year, usually in South Carolina in the Paris Mountain area, just outside of Greenville. And this year, because of COVID, we did it at Kanuga. And so I'm speaking with local racer Gus Michaels, who got 5th place or first place, but also has a day job. And get some comments about how the race went. You've obviously ridden at Kanuga quite a bit, and there were some new features and a new trail for the enduro. How did those things affect the race for you, being familiar with the park in general?
It definitely made it more laid back, sleeping in your own bed the night prior and kind of riding with the same people that you always ride with. It was pretty cool. We were able to do the stages in any order that we wanted to, so you could just kind of knock them out, see where there was a line, and maybe go to a different stage or go kind of over where your buddies were.
Yeah, that helps out. Probably helped out with the social distancing and COVID protocol for that matter as well, huh?
Yep, for sure.
Was there a crux stage for your race?
I think for me, Roto Ruckus was one of the harder ones just because it was the longest and it had a lot of things taped differently. So being kind of familiar with it and riding there pretty often, having that muscle memory and then switching it up, coming around a turn and then kind of being reminded oh wait, different corner coming up now. That made it tough.
Yeah, it was interesting to have the berms taped off and make the turns a little interesting and unique. And it seemed like there were some narrow chutes that were taped in as well. So you participated in a lot of the summer series practice races that they did there. Do you think that gave you any advantage?
I think so. Just kind of knowing how a trail race is, or maybe where you've made mistakes prior. Maybe where I've come in a little bit too hot or haven't pedaled hard enough or something, you have that reminder as to how to attack it the next time around.
Have you done a previous Cranksgiving before when they were in Paris Mountain?
I have. I did it a few years in 2017 and 18, but in 2019 I was out with a broken shoulder blade.
That's right. I remember that. What do you think about the event being held at Kanuga and kind of housed all in one place versus the previous format?
I really liked it just because we were able to practice on Saturday, whereas at Paris Mountain it was closed to bikes on Saturday, and being at a bike-only venue rather than having hikers and stuff made it a lot easier.
And despite COVID, how do you think having it at Kanuga affected the turnout?
I think that it probably helped things because of people being able to show up all weekend and practice on Saturday and race on Sunday, and it's received a lot of good press lately and their media is good. Kind of everybody wanted to make the trip there to see what it was like.
Any more thoughts about the event?
I mean, I had a great time. There's really nothing that I would have changed. I love the way we were able to do the stages in any order like that. It kept things moving all day. I never sat in line, whereas previous years at Paris Mountain, I may have stood in line for an hour and a half.
That's nice. Kind of keeps you from cooling off too much. Do you want to shout out to any of the other racers or any sponsors?
Huge thanks to Fox, Cushcore, the guys over at Squatch have been helping me out. All of my friends pretty much were there. So my buddy Ben, me and him race, we're super close, and I was just right there hanging out with Russell, and some people came down from Ohio. So it was a super fun event, and shout out to all those guys that made the drive down to North Carolina.
Awesome. Well, thanks for giving me a recap of the race. Anybody listening out there that would like to sponsor Gus Michaels, go ahead and tell them where they can find you on social media.
My Facebook is Gus Michaels, and my Instagram is Gus_Michaels, and I don't do Twitter.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot.
So, Drew, we kind of touched base beginning of the episode talking about leaf conditions on trails. And that brings up an interesting topic that, is a little heated amongst different regions of the country, mostly us East Coasters where we have lots of trees with seasonal leaves. And so about this time every year, it's leaf surfing season. There's the ever-growing debate on whether or not a trail should be leaf blown. What are your thoughts on that?
I personally don't think that natural trails should be leaf blown, especially in the forest, in national forests that are multi-use. But I think it can also there's room for debate when it comes to things like how moist the summer was and how moist the topsoil is going into it, and if we're anticipating to get a bunch of moisture in the fall time with the leaves down. All these things take into account how the leaves break down and compost and create loam and hold moisture content into the topsoil to prevent erosion and things like that.
Yeah, it seems like in the fall time of the year, we will have a couple of big heavy rain events. It's kind of peak hurricane season, so we're going to have some storms potentially move through. If it's after the leaves have dropped, then the leaves are going to naturally help shed water off the trail a little bit. So that's definitely going to help in some scenarios. And then as like winter moves on and we go through like some more rains and freeze thaws and stuff like that, definitely, I feel like it definitely helps maintain the trail bed. But then there's something to be said about your city or your county parks, or maybe even a place like Kanuga.
Yeah, I could get why they would, but also wonder too. It's worth discussing maybe if the amount of traffic they get wouldn't beat it in and get the leaves off the trail anyhow, since they handle a crowd there.
Yeah, that is true.
But yeah, I think you're right with things like municipal parks, state parks, things that are a little bit more groomed and a little less wild and natural. There's probably a lot to be said for, and even for safety's sake, just for getting leaves cleared out so you can see obstacles underneath it so that you're not sliding out in turns.
And that kind of brings up an interesting point because I feel like Pisgah has somewhat of different riding seasons. You're going to ride a trail a little differently in summer than you are this time of the year. You're not going to go bombing down Squirrel Gap in full leaf season as you would in the spring. It's just a different riding style. And I think some people don't see it that way. They wanna be able to ride the trail the same no matter what time of year it is, but I think it's nice to have a little breakup in how a trail is perceived when you're riding it.
For sure, I think it keeps you on your toes. I think it probably makes you a more honest and a better rider if you can excel in different conditions. That being said, yeah, I rode out at Stair Creek out in Big Ivy yesterday. I think I probably set a PR. I'd have to check Strava to confirm that, but it's because I couldn't see the rocks that were underneath the leaves I was riding over.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's that, like, if you got, like, good straight sight line, all you see is what appears to be a smooth trail bed, you're just gonna let it eat and just, like, ping pong down it and just monster truck over whatever's under those leaves. So, definitely easy to get overconfident on that stuff because sometimes it can bite you.
Yeah, shout out to Cushcore.
That definitely helps. Well, to continue with our somewhat Kanuga themed episode, I got the chance to sit down with Callie Horwath, who is one of the masterminds behind the Kanuga Bike Park in Hendersonville, North Carolina.
Yeah, looking forward to hearing this.
My title is Ride Kanuga Bike Park Manager. I wear many hats, so it's kind of hard to pick a title that fits just that.
Kind of roughly, how did Kanuga come about?
Kanuga has been a few years in the making. It was about 2 years ago when David Schnitzer, he's the camp, or was the current director of Camp Kanuga, they wanted to offer mountain biking to the kids. They had a few trails, but it was nothing to write home about. And he knew Dr. Dave Lamond, whose house borders the Kanuga property. And they've been friends for a few years, and Dave had asked David, how do you get trails built? What's the process? How much is it gonna cost? And Dave Lamond was, gave him a quote saying, trail builders charge per square foot, and it's gonna be a lot of money. And the Camp Kanuga was like, well, we don't really have that sort of money to invest in these trails. So Dr. Dave was like, well, let me propose to you this. And it took about a year or so to develop a business, Ride Kanuga. We leased the land from the camp. And while the summer camp was closed because of COVID this summer, the kids will be able to utilize the trails next summer. In addition, we're going to have mountain bike specific, camp sessions and get more involved with the camp itself, which will be really cool because a lot of camps, they have kayaking and archery, but none focus that much on mountain biking.
Which is weird because this area is like the mountain bike mecca.
Exactly. And so there'll be skills clinics and things like that that develop kids to be better riders. It's really exciting for the youth in the area and around the country.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've always wondered why there wasn't something more of a Woodward style setup for mountain biking like there is for like BMX skateboarding, gymnastics type of stuff.
Exactly. And like you said, in this area specifically, there's so much great riding. We just are trying to fill that void.
That's great. I know a couple of the camps in the area do have some mountain bikes, but targeted demographics, but there's nothing that's like legit good mountain biking.
Right, exactly. Some of the camps, like you said, they have trails, but, I think we just want to develop kids to learn skills. So, learn how to properly hit jumps and things like that. So,
did the pandemic help Ride Kanuga get going sooner?
Yeah, actually. We were planning this for about 2 years, and when everything got finalized and we're like, all right, we can break ground, it was around March of this year. I mean, that's kind of when COVID kind of begun and quarantine started, and it was awesome to be able to be out in the woods working. And I think we pushed as hard as we could to open early, because I think people were going outside more often than they've ever had before, because you couldn't go into indoor places. And so I think, yeah, it definitely did help us and make us dig a little faster.
Yeah. What was your involvement with building the trails here?
I had previously worked for Elevated Trail Design, and I was working with them for a few months. And Nico, who owns the business with Dr. Dave, who's like, well, we're going to hire you to build some trails, which is pretty awesome when your boyfriend trusts you enough to, build trails where his name is associated with it. So Nico designed, we would flag the trails together, and he designed them all. Yeah, I got in that machine, and I pretty much was in there every day from March to July. And so I built Roto Ruckus, GNCC, High Rocks Climb, Evergreen, First in Flight, and more of like the, I guess, flow trails you could call it. And then I would do handwork on like Painted Black and the black trails and things like that. But primarily I was in the machine.
Okay, so prior to you doing trail work, you were a graphic designer, correct?
Yes.
So how did you go from being a graphic designer to digging?
I don't know where it happened, but I think in general, I would like to classify myself as an artist. And I think trail building is just a different aspect of being an artist. Like, I mean, it sounds like really cliche to be like your dirt is your medium and things like that. I've always liked gardening. And so in a way, trail building is like a larger scale of like, digging in the dirt and making things look nice. And I don't know how it all came together, but it just seemed like trail building was all my passions in one. Being outside, mountain biking, art, it kind of just like made sense in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's great about trail building is everyone has their own aesthetic. Like, I'm going to build a trail differently than Nico's going to build a trail. I think that's what's great, and it's all, I guess, like subjective in a way when people are like, oh, I don't like that trail, but I like this trail. And so that's what kind of makes it an art, which that's what kind of draws me towards it.
How did you transition from working in Illustrator to running a Mini X?
I don't even know. I guess it was like 3 years ago. And I was working at the Pisgah Pride Day, and I was actually doing trail work, which ended with Valerie Naylor, who ended up actually being my neighbor. And she's a professional trail builder. And I was like, how did you like get into this? She's like, well, kind of like what you're doing now, like just like volunteering. And then eventually, it turned into me being a full-time trail builder. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So that kind of like sparked my interest. And then I would help Nico out at Windrock a bit. And then I guess one day,
Nico just threw the keys and said, have
pretty
at it?
much, when he called me, I was at work actually working at the Transylvania Times, called me up, he's like, quit your job, Kanuga's a go. And I was like, all right. So I put my 2 weeks, and I was like, well, here goes nothing. And we rented an excavator, and he's like, all right, here you go. And so I was in the backyard with a little Mini X digging up rotos and burying them and kind of like clearing out our like property. And it's pretty funny to think like that was my first time in an excavator. It was just like, it was kind of steep like where we live. And I was like, well, might as well just go get out of the way. Like, I was like, shouldn't I be on like flat land and just like dig holes first? He's like, no, just go in the woods and play around. And then it's funny because after I was done landscaping, Dr. Dave was like, hey, come to my house. And he already has some bike trails in his backyard. So I was like, sweet. So he let me play in his backyard for about a month or so. It was really cool, actually.
What were some of the challenges to building some of the trails out here?
Challenges? Honestly, the only downside is like working around the weather of Western North Carolina. But it's also like the best thing, because the riding's so good here because the dirt's amazing.
Yeah.
And without the rain, we wouldn't have that amazing dirt. So, it's like
And I think we had an amazing spring.
Yeah, it was awesome, actually. So rain was the only downside, like when you wouldn't want it particularly dig.
Yeah.
But that was pretty much it.
You guys could still do other stuff when it was too wet to dig.
Yeah, exactly. We would be, building bridges or flagging other trails. So there's always like something to do with trail building in the rain.
How has it been going from transitioning from being the trail builder to now kind of managing the park?
A lot more stressful than I thought it would be. I think when we started this, we didn't know how it would take off. So in my head, I was like, all right, sweet. Like, I'll work, check in, like, post stuff on Instagram. And that was like, that's what I thought would be the extent of it, And then it kind of like blew up in a way. And now we're working with Cranksgiving to host their event and all these other things that I didn't really anticipate, but I don't mind it just because it just proves that what we built is something bigger than what we thought, which is amazing. Sometimes I wish I could just go out there and be in the machine all day and just forget about everything, whereas now I'm, doing emails and running Instagram and answering phone calls, and I just wish it was simpler at times when I didn't have to talk to people.
Well, it's like this is your garden that you built, and you planted the seed, and now it's a continuing process.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm slowly like learning my role a bit more and being able to navigate things better, where I'm like, all right, sweet, I can trail build these days, and then the weekend I'm doing this, and this. So I'm getting better at managing my role more.
Yeah. It sounds like your hands are kind of in everything right now, so it's probably not just a basic, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 type of thing.
Right. It's everyday kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's great. Like, there's that silly saying that's pick a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's kind of how it feels.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's kind of how it is with my role. Like, it's a little different than you, where I don't work every day. But when I work, I'm 100% on, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right.
What's your background in cycling?
Oh, in cycling.
Yeah.
I haven't been riding too long. I first got introduced to it, as most girls do, through a boy. I started dating this guy back in like 2012, and he was in the XC racing, like raced professionally. And so I would go to his races, and I was like, oh, this looks sick. Like, this looks like something I could do. And I've always been like an athlete, and I picked it up fairly quickly, and a few months later started racing, and like the following year, like I turned pro and then like raced some elite races, and then
Wait. You went from girlfriend on the sidelines to a year later racing pro?
Yeah. I'm very good at picking things up easily.
Obviously.
What's that? Jack of all trades, like masters of none. Like, that's me in a nutshell. Yeah, I did that for a bit, and then as every XC racer, they get burnt out. So it was around like 2015, and it was just becoming super unhealthy and like not affecting my life in the greatest of ways. And so that's when I recognized that, and I was like, all right, this isn't what I should be doing. So pulled the plug, and it's honestly been great because I've never rode for fun before.
Yeah, that's true, because you went from like
Yeah.
sidelines to like
Yeah, all in.
Racing like hardcore all in.
Yeah. I'm still like a competitive person. Like, if someone's trying to pass me on the climb, of course I'm going to try to keep up. But in general, it's riding for fun's pretty cool. I can see why everyone does it.
So you guys just hosted Cranksgiving here. How did that come about?
So Jarrett, the promoter, we've worked with him for years in Downhill Southeast. He would often time our races. And when he was starting the plan for the event this year, I'm pretty sure it was the Paris Mountain where they typically have it. They were the ones that kind of put their foot down and said, hey, we're not going to, because of COVID, allow this race to happen this year. And so Jared approached us and we're like, heck yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, cranksgiving is huge. Like, it's one of the biggest races like in the Southeast. And so it's just like a great way to get, all those people to see our venue. And I think it went super well. And I'm pulling for next year. Like, I hope it happens, because I think as a facility, not just Ride Kanuga, but the Kanuga Conference Center, it just makes for a great venue. They have all the accommodations, and you can ride to the trails from your cabin, and it kind of just works, I think, logistically, whereas Paris Mountain wasn't always, the best venue because of the restrictions they had for, no bikes on Saturday and all the user problems that they typically have there. But
I've heard some comments kind of going both ways about this past year's Cranksgiving. Some people were really psyched that it was here at Kanuga, but some people kind of miss having the multi-venue setup that they kind of had years prior, where you had like the Alley Cat in Greenville, then you had like the XC race at Pleasant Ridge, and then you had the Enduro at Paris Mountain. It's also cool to have everyone together at the same spot.
Right.
Keeps things a little more simpler and less hectic.
Yeah. I think for the promoter, for them, they want to keep it as, simple and easy as possible, because, we know what it's like to put on a race. So logistically, it just worked better. But I understand, like, you're not going to please everybody.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You guys kind of got creative with some of the trails here. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so you can thank Nico for that one. We kind of wanted to take away the local advantage. So if you come out here every time and you have ridden Roto Ruckus 30 times, well, that's not fair to the person out of town who, is just riding it for the first time, the Friday before the race. And so Nico taped off these lines, and it was awesome, actually, because it threw off the flow. Like, it made you think it kind of saved our trails in a way too, saved some berms. Yeah. But the lines got ridden in so quickly, and it was cool. Like, the new lines on GNC, it was like riding GNC for the first time again, or like you got that loam back, and I thought it was pretty cool. At first people were blowing through tape left and right, but I think it was a good problem to have. Like I said, I think it's good to mix it up and take away that local advantage. And then we also built a new double black trail, which it was awesome. Nico and Chuck built that in a week or so. We found this really nice piece of land that actually had rocks in it, because the rest of the property, isn't very technical. So they utilized that rock and made some really awesome features that I think people were psyched to ride.
Yeah, I've made prior comments about how when I saw you guys post that photo with Chuck there, I was oh, okay.
Yeah. Chuck loves his rock work.
Yes, and I love Chuck's rock work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right now my favorite run is hitting the top half of the double black down to the road, and then I take the road down to the new loam section.
Yeah.
Of Painted Black.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because I feel like that gives you like a kind of a raw forest move, like something BC-ish maybe.
Yeah.
And so it gives you like some cool hard tech stuff, and then like loam.
Exactly.
So kind of moving forward with Kanuga, what's next?
Oh man, I have a whole list, but personally on my list, I would like to see a skills park. And that will be in the overflow parking lot. It's right down the road. It's where we were going to base ourselves out of until Kanuga gave us permission to use the kids camp. But anyway, it's a nice area with like a little bit of grade where you can make, progressive drops and little tiny jump lines, but it still be in the woods. Like I said, I think that's what our area needs. I would like to make an area also specifically for the skills coaches we have. Just talking to a few of my friends who do it for a living, they're like, it's hard to go out in Pisgah and be like, find a spot and be like, all right, do this and practice it over and over and over again. Like, it just like kind of doesn't work. But if you build one jump in the woods, like, near the parking lot, and you can session that over and over and over again. Like, that's how you get good at jumping, like learning the proper technique and just doing it a million times.
Oh, yeah.
That's what our area kind of needs. So that's my next project.
Okay. Nice. And are you going to be building a lot of that?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the jumps. I'm not very good at building jumps, but maybe I should work on it.
Yeah.
But
it's a skills area for everyone to work on their skills.
That's true. Yeah. I should work on my skills. I also wanted to make like single track for like Strider bikes and the Stasic bikes and just like little kids in general, because our hill's kind of big. It's not easy for little kids to get up there.
Yeah.
And I want little kids to be able to ride their Strider bikes, but in the woods. Like, I don't want them to be on a pump track in the middle of like a field.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's not fun. I mean, maybe it's fun for a little kid, but I want them to be in the woods and feel like they're on trails built for them.
That's the one thing that I've really has turned me off about a lot of mountain bike quote jump spots, is they're just in a field.
Yeah.
And it's just like a straight line of jumps.
Right.
Go in the woods.
Yeah.
Build around what's there. You're in the shade in the summertime.
Yeah.
It's the best. You're not forced to go in a straight line. You have to
Right.
like work around things.
Yeah.
And that's what makes jumps fun and interesting.
No, I completely agree. Like, I don't know what it is about just like, riding in the woods is so much more fun than
Being
riding.
in the field.
Yeah, right. Yeah, being in a field,
Just
like
getting sunburned
right.
in the summertime.
Yeah. And like you said, like it's so cool to utilize what's already there on the landscape.
How much time are you getting to play in the woods now versus doing office work?
I'd say it's about half and half, maybe.
I mean,
It's
that's a
not
great
bad.
balance.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd rather be like
Yeah.
60-40 or 70-30.
Exactly. No, yeah. But like I said, I'm working towards that, like in the beginning it was just like a lot of office stuff and setting up retailers and things like that, but I think as we keep going, percentages will change in my favor.
Okay, good.
I was just telling someone today that like our biggest complaint is that you have to climb. They're like,
It's
Kanuga's great, but
mountain
you have to
biking.
climb. I was like, where are you going that you aren't climbing? Like, you go to DuPont, you're gonna climb. You go to Pisgah, you're gonna climb. Like, unless you're going to Florida, you're gonna be pedaling up a hill.
Yeah, I mean, still in Florida, you're going to be pedaling hills. They're just going to be shorter.
Yeah. But it's funny that like that's like a downside to hear. But then it's like, well, get an e-bike.
It's not like you guys have like $2 million to put in a lift.
Yeah, right? I'm over the lift game. Like, I think after Windrock and seeing how well their shuttle service worked, lifts just don't even make sense to me anymore. Like, you could get 2 or 3 times as many people up the hill on their trucks and trailers than you would with a average lift.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And you could be with your friends on, on the bed of the truck, and you could just like be chatting the whole time. Whereas, on the lift, you're
Like
2 or 3 people.
2 or 3 people on a chair, and then
Yeah.
you're hollering back at your buddies behind you.
Exactly. And now it's a bit different with COVID, but I think that e-bike is the new shuttle game. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of bike parks like in Scotland or, overseas where they're like, all right, we're not gonna have our lift, but you can pedal up on your e-bike. It's a COVID-friendly lift.
Oh, for sure. Have you guys looked at the option of running like a van shuttle here?
I mean, that was probably the question I was probably asked a billion times when we first opened, and I don't think we'll do it. I think if, let's say, someone rented the park out and they wanted to do, a party or something, we could, be like, hey, you can do this shuttle on our side-by-side for the day. But as far as the public, I don't think we're gonna go that route just because e-bikes are the new shuttle. Like if you were to have, a truck and trailer and everyone gets to the bottom and has to load up and you have to drive up this like dirt
I could
road
be
to the
halfway up
top.
the dirt road by the
Yeah.
time you get loaded up.
Each shuttle would, I think would honestly be 20 plus minutes. By the time you unload, pick up, I think it would be different if it was like a paved road or even like a gravel road, but since, we're limited to that, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's, what is it, like a 1.2 mile climb?
So the High Rocks climb is 1.5 miles, and then Copperhead Road is like 0.9. So it's not far. Mm-hmm. It's like only 20 minutes to climb on a normal bike.
Yeah.
Like that's just, in my head, it just doesn't seem like that long. But I understand like people who aren't, into climbing or mountain biking.
Yeah.
It is a big hill,
Yeah.
But
And also when you live 4 miles away and this is your like almost everyday spot, that climb gets smaller and smaller.
right. I think we're just like used to Pisgah, where you're climbing for like an hour.
Where you're like climbing Clawhammer Road.
Yeah.
That's like a 7-mile climb or
Yeah.
whatever, and it takes forever.
Yeah, like just imagine when you're doing like Upper Black. That's
Yeah.
like that's like all right. I'm gonna reserve my day to do
I mean, that's a
that
day
whole
ride.
ride. Yeah. So it's funny when people are like, "Oh, the climb just sucks here." You're like, "All right."
It's a chill climb.
Yeah.
And if you take the trail, you even have a cool double option on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, sweet, Callie. So how can people find out more about Kanuga?
You can go to our website, ridekanuga.com. There is a frequently asked questions page, which pretty much has every question I've ever been asked on it. So instead of calling me directly, go to the website.
Go to the FAQ page.
Yeah, exactly.
And I may add that it is a nicely designed website.
Ah, I did not. I was gonna do the website and then I didn't.
Wait, you didn't?
But
do it?
I did the logo.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and then we kind of just based everything around there.
Okay. Who did the website?
Our friend Travis, he actually works for Dr. Dave as his graphic designer.
Oh, okay.
So at that point, I had a lot on my plate.
Yeah, understandable.
So
At least
could do
it's
that.
kind of still in the family.
yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I work on the website. I just added all of our items today to sell for Christmas. Buy your friends some Kanuga swag.
Okay. And you guys have the social medias.
Oh yeah, Ride Kanuga. Instagram's probably our biggest platform
Okay.
that we use. So
Nice.
yeah, try to keep it fresh and entertaining and keep people wanting more.
And I do love how much you share other people's stuff.
Ah,
Like the stories, like it's cool to see that.
yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad people appreciate it. Although now I've stopped sharing videos of Tortuga because that's pretty much the only video people post anymore.
Well, sweet. What are your hours?
Oh, for the shop.
Well, like for people to come ride.
Okay, so the trails are open every day, rain or shine. You just need a valid pass. So let's say you're coming in for the day, you can just buy a daily one online. Otherwise, the shop is open 10 to 5, Friday to Sunday, and you can pick up a pass at the check-in. But the trails are always open.
24/7?
We say 24/7, but I don't know how many people are riding at 3 in the morning. But you can ride at night.
Okay, cool. That's
Yeah.
definitely what I was wanting to know.
Yeah.
Well, Kai, thanks for your time. I know you have a lot on your plate, so I'll let you get back, and hopefully you can figure out some good shipping options for all these orders that are about to get dumped on you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And let's go do some laps.
Yes.
So Kanuga has a full fleet of rental e-bikes. Did Callie have any information about what their user base is like between people that are using regular old analog bikes and people that are using e-bikes?
Well, she did say that pretty much every weekend their e-bike fleet is fully rented out. As far as users at the park go, somewhere around 20 to 25% are using e-bikes, and then, 75, 80% on pedal bikes. I don't know if you've witnessed this before, but I'm going to give a 0.5% is using one wheels.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see some one wheelers there a couple of weeks ago.
Let's give another 0.5% to Dad, who justified his e-bike purchase by pulling his children up the hill with a rope behind his e-bike.
Callie did say that they cannot keep the tow ropes in stock,
Yeah.
that those get scooped up real quick. She did share an interesting map with me that showed kind of like a heat map of where a lot of their customers are coming from for day use passes. And I sent that to you for you to check out. Florida is representing hard at Kanuga.
Yeah, I've got that pulled up right now. I see like the major red hot spots. We have Charlotte, Atlanta, and Miami. And even though it's red on top of Miami, I'd say there's actually a bigger blob in the Tampa St. Pete area. So maybe larger radius, perhaps similar amount of people. It's pretty good pretty good distance to travel to go there.
Yeah, I mean, that's like 11, 12-hour drive to get up here from Miami.
Yeah.
We love the support, so keep coming.
So Mangler, how's our ride weather looking for the weekend?
Man, this weekend is looking to be potentially a little wet. It's going to be cold middle of this week. Friday is showing some showers into Saturday morning, which should taper off, shortly after sun up. And then Sunday and Monday will be mostly sunny. Highs throughout most of the week is going to be in the low 50s.
All right, not too bad. It'll get worse before it gets better.
Honestly, I may keep it safe. I've got a gravel route that I've been looking to explore, so I may go hit that on Saturday.
Good call.
Alrighty, so that wraps up this week's episode. As always, you can find us on the social medias at Pisgah Podcast.
If you've ever hit your brakes but actually sped up because you were in a pile of leaves, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
Ooh, I've definitely experienced that one before. Yeah, that happens. Oh, Drew, Big Ivy, was the gate still open?
Yeah, I think they actually close it on January 1.
Ooh, good to know. How's everything else running?
Good. On the upper corner rock climb, it's all